A tense courtroom moment begins with open disrespect as a powerful judge tries to humiliate a calm black man over a minor fine. But the man's stillness hides something deeper, something that shifts the room's entire energy by the end. "We don't tolerate backtalk from your kind in this courtroom." The words didn't echo. They landed like a slap across skin already bruised by 1,000 small humiliations. The courtroom fell into a strange silence. Even the clicking of the stenographer's fingers slowed as the judge's voice bounced. Off polished mahogany, he leaned back with a smirk. Judge Raymond Kilmer, third-generation lawman with silver hair slicked like oil and a black robe he wore like armor. He tapped the gavel once, slowly like a warning. "Next time, don't park in front of a hydrant and act like you own the damn street." The man standing at the defendant's podium didn't flinch. His name hadn't been spoken yet. His ID card confiscated. During the citation sat unread inside the court clerk's drawer. His file had been mislabeled. Deliberately? No one could say. But here he stood, in a gray suit, clean-shaven. Calm. The courtroom was half full, mostly minor traffic offenders, a few public defenders, one court intern in the corner who had started recording quietly on her phone the moment the judge learned. With venom. This wasn't the first time. Judge Kilmer chuckled under his breath and looked down at the sheet again. "Name says Marcus Reed. You got something to say about this fine before I triple it for wasting my time?" The man Marcus stepped forward, slowly, his shoes clicking softly against the tiled floor. There was no aggression in his body. Number. Raised voice. Just a stillness that made people shift in their seats without understanding why. "I only have one thing to say, Your Honor." "Oh, good. I was afraid you'd start preaching about injustice. Spare me." Marcus's eyes locked. On the judge. "You should read the badge number on the officer who wrote that ticket." A pause. Kilmer scoffed. "Why? Are you saying the officer was wrong?" Marcus's voice was even. "No, I'm saying the officer was one of mine." That line didn't hit the way it should have. Not at first. But then the silence grew louder. The judge narrowed his eyes. "Excuse me?" Marcus slowly opened his briefcase. From it, he pulled a slim leather folder and placed it gently on the bench ledge. Kilmer hesitated before motioning to the bailiff, who stepped up, opened it, and froze. The bailiff's voice was dry. "Federal Prosecutor, U.S. Department of Justice, Clearance Level 4, Active." The courtroom gasped. The clerk looked up from her notes. The intern's recording phone tilted, catching the judge's face change. The color didn't drain, it combusted, turning red in seconds. But Marcus wasn't done. He reached into his coat and pulled out the citation, the very one he'd received 2 weeks ago, issued during a routine Sunday grocery trip, parked outside. A hydrant that was temporarily disabled and coned off. He handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Kilmer read it and stopped. The name of the issuing officer rang a bell. A local beat cop, one with a reputation. A reputation, Marcus Reed would have known well because he reviewed internal affairs reports for a living. Judge Kilmer's eyes flicked up. This doesn't change the legal matter at hand." Marcus tilted his head. "It doesn't, but it does raise a question. If you'd known who I was, would your tone have been different?" Kilmer's mouth twitched. "That's what I thought," Marcus said quietly. And then, for the first time in the courtroom's long memory, a defendant turned his back to the judge, not out of disrespect, but of calm, absolute command. "I'll be filing a formal complaint," Marcus added as he walked back to his seat. The judge didn't respond. Couldn't. The courtroom wasn't whispering. I watched it. Frozen, one woman in the back leaned forward and whispered he played him like a violin. The intern, still recording, whispered to herself, "That's going viral." Marcus sat, folded his hands, and stared forward. The judge cleared his throat. Next case. But even he heard how hollow that sounded, because the courtroom didn't just see a black man fined unfairly. They saw a storm inside a suit, one that didn't need to raise its voice to tear the walls down. And this was just the beginning. Video hit 30,000 views by noon. No hashtags. No caption. Just raw courtroom footage uploaded anonymously by the intern. It started at the judge's slur, cut clean through the humiliation, and ended on Marcus Reed's quiet stare. The comments flooded in. He didn't even raise his voice. That's how you shut down centuries of power abuse in silence. Name: Marcus Reed. Remember it. By mid-afternoon, local news anchors were replaying the clip. The courthouse's PR office received a dozen calls. Someone sent flowers to the Department of Justice building downtown with a note, "Thank you," for sending the right man to the wrong courtroom. Meanwhile, Judge Kilmer sat in his chambers, pacing, jaw clenched. His aide, Janice, stood awkwardly near the door, holding a tablet with the clip queued up again. "You think this'll blow over?" he asked without turning. Janice hesitated. "Sir, he's not just some lawyer. He's federal." Kilmer snatched the tablet and tossed it onto his desk. "That doesn't mean he gets to embarrass me." "No," she replied carefully. "But it means people are watching now." He didn't like that. Not one bit. Marcus walked through the Justice Building like a man on a tightrope, steady. Eyes forward, the weight of headlines just beginning to hang around his shoulders. "Hey, Reed." A voice from the elevators. He turned. It was Valerie Lang, one of the sharpest prosecutors in the division. White, blunt, and rarely sentimental. Today, though, she smiled softly. "I saw the footage," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "Don't worry. I didn't send flowers." She paused, then lowered her voice. "But I've been in front of that judge before. Years ago. I never forgot how he treated the Spanish kid from Eastwood. I never said anything." Marcus nodded. "Saying something now still matters." Valerie studied him. "You're going to do something about this, aren't you?" "I already did." "No. I mean officially." Marcus said nothing, but that silence was louder than any yes. Later that day, a letter slid onto Judge Kilmer's desk. Unmarked envelope. Crisp seal from the DOJ. Inside, a formal request for transcript review, accompanied by the viral clip. Subject line: Inquiry into Judicial Conduct Incident. #8745. He stared at it for nearly 3 minutes. Then he tore it in half and tossed it in the bin. But even he knew the system doesn't look away when it's owner watching. Marcus returned home that night to a mailbox stuffed with envelopes, some official, some handwritten. One letter, in cursive ink, caught his eye. No return address. Inside, a short note. "My brother sat in Kilmer's court last year." Same words, same tone. No badge to save him. "But your silence said everything." "Thank you." He folded the paper slowly, chest tightening, not in pride, but in purpose. This wasn't about ego. This wasn't about revenge. This was about a reminder that no matter how clean the robes, some hands were still dirty and someone had to say it aloud. Or better yet, show it. At midnight, Judge Kilmer sat in his darkened study, bourbon in hand, rewatching the clip on mute. Over and over, each loop chipped away at the illusion he'd built of being untouchable. And for the first time in decades, he realized something chilling. He wasn't in control anymore. Someone else had taken the gavel without ever needing to hold it. The next morning, Kilmer arrived at the courthouse earlier than usual. Suit pressed tighter, tie stiff as his jaw. He walked the hallways like a man on a mission, ignoring the stares of clerks and security who'd seen the clip and weren't sure how to look him in the eye anymore. In chambers. He locked the door. Then I picked up the phone. "Paul, it's Ray. We got into a situation." On the other end, Paul Dunning, State Judicial Review Board Chair and longtime golf buddy, sighed. It's about the clip, isn't it? I need this handled, quietly. It's been taken out of context. Paul interrupted. Ray, it's been seen 3 million times. There is no more context. Kilmer's fingers dug into the phone cord. Then delay the inquiry. Push it into recess. Buy me a few weeks. Paul hesitated. I can try. But you better start. Cleaning house. You've pissed off someone with real credentials this time. The line went dead. Kilmer sat back, sweat building behind his collar. He was no longer being treated like the judge. He was being treated like the problem. In another part of the city, Marcus sat at a long wooden table beneath the DOJ seal. Files spread across it, one of them marked Kilmer Complaints, sealed. He didn't flinch at the red stamp. He simply opened it. Valerie Lang walked in with 2 coffees and a raised brow. You're really going through with this? I'm not going after him, Marcus said. I'm shining a light. Valerie set down the coffee. And you're aware that light might burn some friends of his too? He nodded. Then they shouldn't have been standing so close. Valerie exhaled. Impressed. You know, half the city's watching you now. I'm not doing it for them. No? I'm doing it for the kid who'll stand in that courtroom next month. The one who won't have a badge. She didn't reply. She didn't have to. Later that day, Marcus visited Eastwood Community Center. It wasn't scheduled. Wasn't official. He just needed to walk among the people who never got justice. A teenage boy recognized him. Hey, you the guy from the video? Marcus smiled gently. I'm the guy from the parking ticket. The boy laughed. Nah, you more than that. You made that judge look stupid without even yelling. Another voice chimed in. You think he's gonna get fired? Marcus didn't answer, but he did say this. Sometimes power doesn't crumble, it's just moved out of reach. Inside the courthouse, Janice the aide watched as Kilmer barked at his law clerk, rifled through folders, and shredded papers that no one had asked for. It wasn't damage control anymore. It was fear. She turned to leave the room quietly, but Kilmer stopped her. What? Janice paused. You remember that black kid last summer? Marcus defended him. You gave the kid 30 days for a missed court date. No priors. Just forgot? Kilmer blinked. What about it? Janice's eyes held. I saw Marcus outside that day, waiting, watching. She left. And for the first time, Kilmer realized Marcus had already been here before. And this time, he wasn't walking out quietly. He was staying. And the walls were closing in. The courthouse steps hadn't seen cameras like this in years. Dozens of reporters, crowded behind makeshift barricades. Microphones pointed forward like weapons. Some wore press badges. Others held phones high, live streaming to an audience that now stretched far beyond state lines. Marcus Reed stepped up to the podium. No grand entrance. No entourage, just a man. In a navy suit and steady voice, speaking not for drama, but for truth. I did not ask for attention, he began. But I won't waste it. Double quotes, click dash click. The cameras fed. In recent weeks, disturbing footage emerged from a courtroom here. In our city. What it showed was not just a moment of disrespect, but a pattern. A system that protects its own. Silences the rest. A beat. Today, I filed an official motion with the State Judicial Review Board. Accompanying it are record-sealed complaints, ignored warnings, testimonies from public defenders, and court transcripts, all connected to one courtroom. One? Judge, he paused. Judge Raymond Kilmer. The name cracked through the air like thunder, gasps, murmurs. A few jaws visibly dropped. I am not here as a federal prosecutor, Marcus said softly. I'm here as a citizen. As a black man. as a witness to decades of silence. Then came the quote that would headline every news station that night. Accountability isn't vengeance, it's a mirror. And sometimes it's the only way power learns how it looks. In his office, Kilmer watched it all unfold on a small TV above his bookshelf. He stood still, arms folded, breathing through his nose like a bull waiting for a gate to open. When the quote landed, he muttered, "He wants a show? I'll give him one." He turned to his aide. "Schedule me for a press response, tonight." Janice didn't move. He barked, "Did you hear me?" "Yes, sir, but—" She swallowed hard. "They don't want to hear from you. Not right now." Kilmer blinked. "They always want to hear from me." But even as he said it, the words felt stale in his mouth, like something past its expiration date. That evening, Marcus sat quietly in a dim corner booth of a downtown diner alone, at peace, not hiding, just thinking. The waitress slid him a coffee without asking. "You did good today," she whispered. He looked up. "You saw it?" She smiled, then nodded toward the TV above the bar. The replay was on loop. Subtitles ran beneath his speech. A young couple nearby whispered, glancing toward him with subtle recognition. He didn't engage. He didn't need to, because he hadn't spoken to be seen. He'd spoken so others could hear themselves for the first. Timed out in the newsroom across town, Valerie Lang sat with a stack of folders and an open laptop. She was prepping for what came next. A phone buzzed. "Marcus?" she answered. "Think he'll fight back?" he asked. "He already is." Leaked a statement to a blog calling the investigation mob justice and a threat to judicial independence. Marcus didn't laugh, but he smirked. "Arrogance is always loudest when it's scary." Valerie leaned back. "Are you ready if he drags your past into this?" Marcus paused. "Let him try." "Because I'm not ashamed of where I came from." "And now?" she asked. "I'm just making sure no one else has to start from the same place." That night, the city didn't sleep, not out of fear, but because something long frozen had started to thaw, and truth was finally louder than legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not justice. This is a witch hunt. Kilmer's voice trembled just slightly behind the podium, even though the microphone masked it. His tie was looser than usual. His tone had hints of forced calm. The cameras were fewer than Marcus's, the crowd colder. "I have served this city for 38 years. Never once has my integrity been questioned until a viral video took a moment out of context." He held up a printed screenshot of the clip. "This doesn't show the hours I spend in these chambers, the kids I've redirected, the criminals I've sentenced fairly. This isn't me, but it was him." And everyone knew it. A few journalists checked their phones mid-speech. Some were already reporting. Kilmer plays victim in press conference claims racial bias used against him. The irony didn't go unnoticed. Marcus sat in his office, blinds drawn, reading over older complaints filed against Kilmer. Most had been dismissed. A few were settled quietly. The patterns were unmistakable. Harsher sentencing for Black and Latino defendants, public humiliation, judicial remarks that tiptoed just shy of slurs. It hadn't just been one moment. It had been their career of them. He closed the folder when a knock interrupted. "Come in," he said. The door creaked open. A woman stepped in mid-50s, tired eyes, nurse scrub still wrinkled from her shift. She held a worn file in one hand. "I'm sorry to barge in," she said, "but I saw you on the news. I had to come." Marcus stood. "Of course, please sit." She didn't. "My son's name was Devin Carter. He's gone now. 3 years ago. He got 30 days in county for a misdemeanor he didn't commit. Judge Kilmer didn't let his public defender speak. Devin came out changed, scared. Then, he never got back up." Silence sat heavy between them. "I filed a complaint," she said. I begged someone to read it. Nothing happened. Marcus reached for the file in her hands. It's yours, she said. I don't need revenge. I just need someone to finally see my son. He opened the folder. Inside, court transcripts, arrest photos, a small school portrait of Devon, a black boy with hopeful eyes that never grew older. Hours later, Marcus placed the file on top of a growing pile labeled testimonies. Some were written in pen, some printed, some just names on sticky notes with years scribbled next to them. Each one a weight dot, but each one also a match. Meanwhile, Judge Kilmer sat behind his desk, scrolling social media with increasing rage. Every scroll brought more edits, memes, and stitched videos his voice distorted, captioned with phrases like "power doesn't protect you anymore." He hurled the tablet across the room. It shattered against the bookshelf. Janice entered just as the echo died. "Sir, the review board has scheduled your inquiry for next week." Kilmer's nostrils flared. "Good. Let them come. I'll bury him in protocol." Janice hesitated. "You might want to know," she added softly. "Marcus has the Carter file." Kilmer froze. "Then, they dug that up?" Janice didn't reply, because even he knew it had never been buried. Just ignored. And now, every ghost has found its voice. They met at a small law library tucked between shuttered storefronts and a dry cleaner's, far from cameras, far from headlines. The woman waiting at the back table wore wireframe glasses and a tweed blazer too. Decades out of date, her name was Helen Moss, retired judge. Once respected, once feared. Now mostly forgotten by a system she once shaped with Kilmer. "You wanted to talk?" she asked, eyeing Marcus carefully. "I wanted to understand," he said. "You served on the bench with him for 15 years, Helen smirked. "And didn't speak to him for the last 5. Why?" She sipped her tea. "Because arrogance became cruelty, and cruelty stopped being subtle." Marcus leaned forward. "You knew he was biased?" "I knew he was drowning in the fear that the law wasn't built for men like him anymore." She paused. "Raymond Kilmer doesn't hate black men. He hates irrelevance. That's what this is about. You represent everything he can't control. Power." Without apology. Marcus blinked slowly. Helen reached into her bag and slid over a folder. Testimony from one of his former law clerks. Sealed. Never submitted. She was terrified. Is she willing to talk now? Helen raised an eyebrow. "Now that you've made it safe?" "Yes." That afternoon, Marcus returned to the DOJ with the folder tucked under his arm. Valerie was already in the war room, pacing, hands full of highlighters and affidavits. "We've got 8 official testimonies," she said. 6 are attorneys. 2 are private citizens. "And now with the Carter file, make it 9, Marcus said, handing her the clerk's testimony. Valerie scanned it, then looked up. "This isn't just enough," she said. "This is structural. This is grounds for removal." Marcus nodded. "I don't want a takedown. I want a precedent." Valerie smiled. "Well, you just built one." Meanwhile, Kilmer sat at home, blinds drawn, reading a newspaper like it was still 1995. He scanned the editorial page until he found the piece he feared most. A system that protected one man for too long. Byline: Anonymous Public Defender. Read every word. Then read it again. Because for the first time, the world wasn't defending him. It was dissecting him. At sunset, Marcus walked the edge of Franklin Park. It was quiet. Trees swayed. An older man with a cane nodded at him. 2 kids raced past on scooters. Peace for a second. Then a voice behind him. "You're making a lot of enemies." Marcus turned. A journalist, one of the ones who'd covered the original press conference. "You worried?" she asked. "No," he replied. "I'm more worried about who's still quiet." The journalist smiled. "Well, off the record?" 3 judges are already drafting an internal letter in support of your review motion. Names? She shook her head. Not yet. But the walls are moving. He looked at her. Good. They've been standing still too long. And in the silence between footsteps, Marcus knew this wasn't just about one man anymore. It was about all the doors Kilmer had closed behind him, and the reckoning that now came knocking on every single one. The hearing chamber was small, solemn, and thick with tension. Rows of legal minds lined the benches. Judges, review board members, senior clerks, all under the seal of the State Judicial Oversight Committee. Cameras were banned, but reporters waited outside like wolves. Every word spoken in that room would echo across the city by sunset. At the center sat Judge Kilmer. His robe was absent. He wore a stiff navy suit and sat too still, as if the wrong twitch would betray weakness. His jaw was set, eyes flinty. Across from him, seated calmly under oath, was Marcus Reed. No theatrics. No fire. Just steady breath and a calm that no one could shake. Double quotes, Mr. Reed. The lead ethics officer began. Please tell the committee why you believe Judge Kilmer is unfit to remain on the bench. Marcus nodded once, then began. I have reviewed 32 past cases in which the sentencing pattern showed irregular severity. Against black defendants, some without criminal history. These patterns are not isolated. He held up a folder. This is the Carter file. A young man sentenced without proper defense, despite having no prior record. He was failed not just by the system, but by the man who controlled it. He laid it on the table gently. Then opened another. This, he said, is a statement from Judge Kilmer's former clerk detailing racial remarks made in private chambers. These were never reported. She was 19. She was terrified. Another file hit the table. Here's the sealed complaint from 2019. And here's the court transcript where Judge Kilmer mocked a Hispanic father for needing a translator. He stopped. Let the silence breathe. This is not one incident, Marcus said finally. This is a legacy. A ripple ran through the chamber. Quiet nods. Pens frozen mid-no. Then came the question. Mr. Reed, is this personal? Marcus met the officer's gaze. It was. When he tried to humiliate me in public, it was personal. He paused. But I'm not here to settle a score. I'm here to keep the next man from needing a badge just to be respected in a courtroom. Kilmer's defense was colder. This is a coordinated attack, he growled. A federal prosecutor with political ambitions. A media circus fueled by one video. He pointed. He never once filed a formal complaint until he smelled blood. The committee didn't flinch. One member asked, Judge Kilmer, do you deny referring to Mr. Reed as his kind during that hearing? Kilmer's jaw clenched. I don't recall. Another asked, do you deny using terms like those people when discussing defendants in private chambers? I don't recall. A final voice. Do you deny assigning harsher penalties to black and Latino men across multiple years? I resent the implication. But he never said no. When the hearing adjourned, Marcus walked past Kilmer. The judge glanced up, expecting arrogance. Instead, he saw something worse. Pity. Marcus didn't speak. He didn't need to. Outside the courthouse, the press waited. Marcus didn't approach the podium. He simply walked through the crowd, quiet, measured. But someone shouted, do you think he'll be removed? Marcus turned once, just once, and said, I think justice has waited long enough. Then he vanished into the crowd, and behind him, the courthouse walls trembled for the first time in decades. It started with a leak. A confidential letter, written by 3 senior judges, was published by a major newspaper. The headline read, The silence is over. We can no longer defend Judge Kilmer. Inside, the judges outlined their concerns. They cited patterns of racial bias, intimidation of clerks, and an erosion of integrity unbefitting the office. No names were redacted. No punches pulled. By morning, a fourth judge signed it. By noon, 6. Marcus stood in front of the DOJ building, reading the paper beneath gray skies. Valerie joined him, coffee in hand, eyes wide. He's done. This letter is an earthquake. Marcus didn't smile. Then why does it feel like the ground still isn't moving fast enough? He asked. She nodded. Because real justice doesn't come with applause. They stood in silence. Behind them, a crowd of junior attorneys gathered, nodding at Marcus like he was something more than a man, something closer to proof. Across town, Judge Kilmer paced his private chambers, watching his name unravel on television screens. The phone rang again. This time, it was Paul Dunning, his old friend, the review board chair. We're losing votes. Ray, Paul said flatly. Kilmer gripped the edge of his desk. You said you had my back. I did, but I'm not going down with you. Kilmer's voice cracked. You owe me. I owe the bench more. Click. For a moment, all Kilmer could hear was the slow whir of his ceiling fan and the creak of his leather chair behind him. The room felt smaller. The walls closer. Marcus received a letter. That evening, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. I testified against my own judge today because of you. I didn't think I had a voice until I saw you use yours. Thank you. A law clerk, he folded it gently and placed it beside the Carter file on his desk, beside legacy, beside grief, beside truth. Meanwhile, the city braced. The inquiry verdict was set to be delivered in 72 hours. News tickers buzzed with speculation. Editorials lined up on both sides. Some called it overreach. Some called it too late. But most called it justice. Kilmer arrived at his estate's back patio with a glass of scotch and no appetite. His wife hadn't spoken much in days. He sat down and muttered, 38 years, and this is what I get. She didn't look at him. Just said softly, you got away with it for 37. And for once, he didn't have a response. That night, Valerie sent Marcus a simple message. There. Offering you a seat on the review board once this is done. He stared at the screen. Then I closed it. Because the fight wasn't about the seat. It was about who never got one. And Marcus wasn't done fighting. The courtroom was at full capacity. Not a trial, but it felt like one. Every pew filled, every breath held. Court officers stood at the edges like statues. The review board sat elevated behind a long polished desk. 8 members, robes absent, expressions unreadable. At the center of it all, seated behind a modest table, was Judge Raymond. Kilmer. No bench. No gavel. Just a man in a chair he couldn't control. Marcus sat in the second row, surrounded by public defenders, junior lawyers, former defendants, and a mother who held a photo of Devin Carter close to her chest. The lead ethics officer cleared his throat. After extensive review, interviews, and examination of both sealed and public documents, this committee issues the following decision regarding Judge Raymond Kilmer. The pause stretched forever. Effective immediately, Judge Kilmer is hereby removed from the bench. His conduct constitutes a breach of ethical duty, racial bias unbecoming of judicial office, and a failure to uphold the integrity required by this position. Gasps rippled, but Marcus didn't move. He simply exhaled. The officer continued. Further, review of past sentencing records will proceed under independent investigation. All future cases will be reassigned. Kilmer's hands twitched. He didn't speak, didn't shout. He just sat there like a king told the castle was never his. To begin with. Outside, the crowd erupted. Cheers mixed with tears. Strangers hugged. Reporters swarmed. Protesters dropped their signs because they no longer needed them. And still, Marcus didn't speak to the press. He walked out through the back, down the courthouse steps, not as a man who'd won something, but as someone who'd restored something. Valerie caught up to him near the street. "It's done," she whispered. "No," Marcus said. "It started." She looked at him. "You could take that seat. Help shape what comes next." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to look back at the courthouse, its stone columns. The steps that once held people in fear, now they held something else. Hope. Inside the now empty chamber, Kilmer remained seated long after the tunes of the after the board had exited. His robe sat folded beside him, neatly, quietly, like a casket lid. Janice approached slowly. "Do you need help gathering your things, sir?" He didn't look at her. He just said, "I never thought it would end like this." She tilted her head. "It didn't end, sir. It just stopped protecting you." Marcus returned home that night to find a note taped to his door, scrawled in bold ink. "For every time we weren't believed, thank you." No name. No address. But Marcus understood. Justice doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers back. And this time it whispered his name. 1 month later, the courthouse smelled the same. Polished wood, dust, paper, quiet tension, but something felt different. The staff walked straighter. The clerk spoke louder. Defendants looked up instead of down. And when Marcus Reed walked through the metal detectors, even the bailiffs nodded, respectful, not fearful. He wasn't there for a hearing. He wasn't there for revenge. He was there because a young public defender had asked him to speak, not to the press, not to a camera. To first-year law students gathered in the observation gallery. They sat in rows, notebooks out, eyes wide. He stood before them, calm as ever, no robe, no title. "Just a man in a courtroom," he began. He glanced around. "Some of you will sit here one day. Some of you will argue before someone like I did. But remember, this justice isn't automatic. It's not printed into the walls. It doesn't live in the seal above the bench." He tapped his chest. "It lives here, a beat, and it dies in silence." One student raised a hand. "How did you stay calm that day, when he insulted you?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Because if I had shouted, you'd only remember his insult. But because I didn't, you remembered my silence." They nodded. Another student asked, "Would you ever become a judge?" He paused. "I don't want a chair. I want a mirror. Something that reflects the system back at itself, every day." Afterward, Marcus stepped out onto the courthouse steps, the same ones where Kilmer had stood, where the city had once stared at power and seen fear. Now they saw change. Valerie met him halfway down. "The seat's still open," she said. Marcus didn't look back. "Let it stay open a little longer. Maybe someone out there needs to know they don't need a title to make noise." That night, he walked the streets of Eastwood. No cameras. No suit. Just him, a boy passing on a bike slowed. "You're the guy from court, right?" Marcus nodded. The boy grinned. "My mom says you made the world fairer." Marcus crouched, eye level with him. "No," he said gently. "You will." And in that quiet neighborhood, beneath flickering street lamps and cracked sidewalks, justice didn't wear a robe. It wore a promise that silence wouldn't win anymore. That dignity was louder than hate, and that every man, no matter how small, could change the shape of power if he stood tall enough to face it.